The day my parents' divorces, two agreements lay on the table. One meant staying in the old neighborhood with my dad, who was drowning in gambling debts and excuses. The other meant moving to the coast with my mom, who had remarried a wealthy man with a carefully polished smile. In my last life, my little sister, Chloe, had cried and begged to go with Mom. I quietly packed my bags and followed Dad, pretending I didn't notice Chloe's trembling lips or the way she clung to nothing, as if the world itself might abandon her. Later, Dad quit gambling. By some miracle, or maybe just sheer luck, he became a millionaire. He spoiled me rotten, every wish answered, every whim indulged. Chloe, meanwhile, was trapped under the thumb of her stepfather, silenced and emotionally bruised until the weight of it finally claimed her. This time, things were different. Chloe snatched the cigarette from Dad's hand and hugged him tightly, refusing to let go. I feel for Dad, she whispered. You go to Mom? It's okay, I said. I'll keep the good life here for you. Dad paused, then gently stroked Chloe's hair, relief softening his features for the first time in years. I said nothing, picking up the train ticket to the coast, and watched the scene silently. Chloe didn't know that in my last life, Dad only quit gambling because I, riddled with a brain tumor, had worked myself to the bone, coughing up blood to pay off his debts. My life had been the price for his fleeting peace. Now, reborn, I faced the same decision with no debts, but the same suffocating echoes of the past. All I wanted was a good night's sleep, free from creditors banging at the door, free from the sickly scent of cheap cigarettes. I picked up my duffel bag. Get out, I muttered under my breath. Go find your mom, the one who only cares about money. Dad waved me away, like shooing a fly. Chloe hid behind him, her little face contorting into a childish grimace. Her lips formed the words silently, exaggerated. Sis, don't come begging me for money later. I smiled, saying nothing, and turned to walk into the rain. I hunched my shoulders against the cold, letting the droplets soak me to the bone. Honestly, it didn't matter where I went. I only wanted a quiet place to endure these last few moments. A black Mercedes slid to a stop at the end of the alley, Mom's perfectly made-up face appearing in the rolled-down window. She frowned, eyes flickering with disgust at my drenched self. What happened to you? Get in quickly. Don't get the car dirty. I opened the back door, holding my bag. Put that in the trunk, she snapped. It's filthy. Probably crawling with germs. I hesitated, but obeyed, closing the door behind me and settling into the corner of the car. The heater blasted, but I still shivered, feeling a chill that seemed to seep straight into my bones. Jade, once we get there, you need to be sensible, Mom said, glancing at me through the rearview mirror. Your stepfather doesn't like noise. Don't leave your room unless you have to. Eat quietly. And never, ever mention your dad. He is bad news. I stared out at the rain streaking across the window. Got it, I muttered, feeling the familiar spike of pain lance through my head. My vision blurred, and I pressed my forehead. What's wrong? Mom asked, impatience dripping from every word. Nothing. Just car sickness, I said, trying to sound delicate. Just like your dad, she scoffed. I closed my eyes, swallowing the metallic taste of blood welling up in my throat. Next time, no way am I signing up for this again, I thought bitterly. The drive dragged on for 5 long hours. When the car finally rolled into the hillside villa community, it was pitch black outside, though every home gleamed under bright, cold lights. The neighborhood felt eerily silent, almost dead. We're here, Mom announced, touching up her lipstick, shifting seamlessly from sharp-tongued woman to sweet, devoted wife. Get out of the car. Remember to call him Mr. Henderson, she instructed. I followed her inside, carrying my duffel bag like a shield. On the living room sofa sat a man with a book balanced across his lap, a blanket draped over his legs. He looked up as we entered. My stepfather, Robert Henderson, the same man who, in my last life, had slowly suffocated Chloe until she broke. Mom pushed me forward, plastering a smile on her face. Jade, say hello to Mr. Henderson. I stepped closer and bowed slightly. Hello, Mr. Henderson. He turned the page of his book, as if I didn't exist. A faint, non-committal hum escaped his throat a few seconds later. His gaze swept over my wet shoes, his brow furrowing imperceptibly. Then he returned to the book. First room on the left, he said finally. Upstairs is the guest room. It's ready. Thank you, Mr. Henderson, I murmured. Mom exhaled a sigh of relief, pulling me upstairs.
See?
Mr. Henderson is really a good man. Just don't upset him, and you'll be able to stay in this house. The guest room was huge and empty. Mom, I called out just as she was about to leave. What is it? She asked, turning. I'd like to change rooms. Her expression darkened instantly. Jade, are you being picky? The moment you arrive? What is wrong with this room? It's 100 times better than your dad's dump. Don't be so ungrateful. I watched her rant calmly. Only after she finished did I speak.
No.
This room faces north. It's too cold. I'd like a south-facing one, even if it's smaller. Mom's eyes widened. Are you crazy? Why would you stay in a storage room when there's a perfectly good guest room? Are you trying to make Mr. Henderson think I'm abusing you? Her voice rose shrill. My hands went to my ears. The world felt like it might explode. I'm just cold, I repeated. 2 light taps came from the doorway. Robert Henderson stood there, a glass of water in his hand, expression grim. I hadn't even noticed him arrive. What's all the shouting about? His voice cut through the chaos, calm but sharp. Mom's face instantly transformed, her panic covered by a sweet, practiced mask. Mom's voice cracked as she tried to compose herself. Nothing, Robert. This child is being difficult. Complaining about the room. I was just about to teach her a lesson. Robert Henderson looked at me, and I looked back. His face was even paler up close, almost translucent under the hallway lights. His lips had no color at all. He looked like someone who lived with 1 foot already in the grave. Which room do you want? He asked. The one facing south, I said, pointing toward the end of the hallway. That is where we store old furniture. It's fine, I replied. As long as there is sunlight. Robert Henderson stared at me in silence for a few seconds, as if trying to understand something I wasn't saying. Then he nodded once. Suit yourself. Just don't shout in the hallway. He turned and walked away, uninterested in whatever battle Mom and I were having. Mom jabbed my forehead with her finger. Go on, make a fool of yourself. Living in a storage room. What will people say about me? I ignored her completely. I picked up my duffel bag and walked to the end of the hallway. When I pushed open the door, a cloud of dust rose up, tickling my throat. But the floor-to-ceiling window greeted me like a quiet promise. When the sun rose tomorrow, this room would be warm. That was all I needed. I made the bed, then slid my old photo album under the pillow. My medical diagnosis was tucked inside. As long as I was still breathing, nobody would bother digging through my personal things. That night, for the first time in a long while, I slept deeply. No debt collectors pounding on doors. No drunken shouting. No choking smell of cigarettes. Just darkness wrapped around me like a blanket. When I finally woke, morning sunlight had already spilled across the floor. I settled into the house like a ghost, quiet enough to be forgotten. Robert Henderson liked silence so much that even the housekeepers walked around in soft slippers. Mom tried everything to please him, cooking soups until she smelled like herbs, giving him back massages, even forcing herself to watch those dull financial programs he liked. She moved through the house like a high-class servant, terrified of slipping out of favor. As for me, I rarely left my room except for meals. The storage room was still cluttered with old chairs and box knickknacks, but it had sunlight. I often dragged a chair to the window and sat there for hours, soaking in the warmth like an old woman who had already seen too much of life. Sometimes Robert Henderson would walk past my door. He would pause when he saw me sitting in the sun, his expression unreadable, as if he was looking at someone he recognized from another lifetime. But he never spoke. One afternoon at lunch, the dining table was so quiet that even the soft clink of silverware sounded sharp. Then my phone vibrated on the table. The sound cut through the silence, like an alarm. Robert Henderson frowned. Mom's fork hit her plate. Who told you to bring your phone to the table? No manners. Hang up. I picked up the phone. It was Chloe. I declined the call. 2 seconds later, it vibrated again. I declined again. The third time, Robert Henderson set his fork down. Answer it, he said quietly. It is giving me a headache. I stepped out onto the balcony and answered. Chloe's voice exploded immediately. Jade, are you doing this on purpose? Did you take the passbook? I held the phone away from my ear. What passbook? Dad says the family passbook is gone, and he is sure you stole it. There is $5,000 in there. I laughed under my breath. Those $5,000 are what I earned washing dishes last summer. That is my money. Even if you earned it, it is still family money, she snapped. Dad cannot buy cigarettes now, and he is throwing things. Transfer it, or I will tell Mom you stole it. Behind her voice, I heard objects crashing and Dad shouting curses. I should have strangled you when you were born. Even miles away, my chest tightened as if the old walls were closing in on me again. I did not steal it, I said calmly. That money was my medical fund. Medical fund? What sickness do you even have? Chloe scoffed. Stop playing the victim. Transfer it now, or I will go to your school and tell everyone you do not care if Dad dies. The balcony overlooked a garden full of red flowers, vivid as spilled blood. Chloe, I said quietly, you chose your path. Walk it. Even if you are crawling. Do not drag me into it anymore. I hung up and blocked her number. When I turned, a sudden warmth trickled from my nose. I touched it. My hand came away smeared with blood. I pressed a tissue to it and tilted my head back, but the bleeding only grew heavier. Blood slid down my throat, making me gag. I hurried to the downstairs restroom. The mirror showed half my face stained red. I turned on the faucet, splashing water on my face in frantic handfuls. What are you doing? I froze. Through the mirror, I saw Robert Henderson standing in the doorway. His eyes moved slowly over my blood-streaked face, unreadable and dark. I wiped my face roughly. Just a nosebleed, I muttered. Probably from the heat. Robert said nothing. He walked toward me and held out a clean hand towel. Wipe that off. I took it, pressing it to my nose. Thank you, Mr. Henderson. His gaze drifted to the faint pink swirls in the sink that had not fully rinsed away. Does this happen often? Occasionally. I lied. It had been happening almost daily. Robert studied me. You should see a doctor. No need. It is an old problem, I said, lowering my head as I tried to slip past him. Jade. I stopped. You do not have to live so carefully here, he said. Your mom is your mom. You are you. I looked up at him. His expression stayed distant, but something flickered behind his eyes. Something almost gentle. If you are not feeling well, say something, he added. Stop forcing yourself to be tough. Nobody is giving you a prize for suffering alone. He turned and left, his footsteps soft down the hallway. The towel in my hand carried a faint scent of pine. His scent. With it came a strange undertone, almost like the whisper of decay. A reminder that even the people who looked the strongest were often falling apart quietly. The next morning, I found a bottle of iron supplements on my nightstand. No note. No explanation. Just a small amber bottle with my name written in careful, clinical handwriting on a label that looked professionally printed. I picked it up, turning it over in my hands. Robert Henderson had been to my room while I slept. The thought should have unsettled me, but instead, I felt oddly seen. As if someone had finally noticed I was drowning and threw me a rope without making a show of it. I took one tablet dry, swallowing it with difficulty. At breakfast, nothing was mentioned. Mom chattered about an upcoming charity gala she wanted to attend. Robert read the financial section of the newspaper, his pale fingers moving the pages with deliberate care. I ate my eggs quietly, and when I excused myself, Robert's eyes followed me briefly before returning to his paper. That afternoon, I wandered the house for the first time since arriving. Mom was out with friends, and Robert had retired to his study, with the door closed. The hillside villa felt like a mausoleum, beautiful, sterile, and suffocating. I found myself in the garden. It was larger than I'd realized from the balcony, stretching back toward a grove of old trees. The red flowers I'd seen before were everywhere, roses, camellias, hibiscus, all bleeding crimson against the manicured green. But there was something wrong with them. Their petals were perfect, almost unnaturally so, as if they'd been arranged by someone who understood beauty only as a concept, not a living thing. In the center of the garden stood a stone bench, weathered by time. Beside it lay a book, left open face down. I picked it up carefully. It was a collection of poems, the spine worn soft from repeated reading. The bookmark was a pressed flower, faded to nearly translucent. On the inside cover, an inscription in the same careful handwriting. To Robert, may you find peace in words when the world offers none. E. I closed the book quickly, as if I'd glimpsed something intimate. When I turned to leave, Robert was standing at the edge of the garden path, watching me. You found my reading spot, he said. I'm sorry, I said, offering the book back. I didn't mean to intrude. You are not intruding. He walked forward, each step measured and deliberate, as if he had to think about the mechanics of movement. That bench gets lonely. Few people appreciate gardens anymore. Up close, I could see the toll of whatever was consuming him. His skin had the papery quality of someone who'd been ill for a long time. But his eyes, they were sharp, intelligent, taking in everything.
Who was E?
I asked before I could stop myself. He paused, looking at the pressed flower in the bookmark. For a moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, someone who understood that beauty and decay are not opposites. They are the same thing, viewed from different angles. He took the book from my hands, and his fingers, cold, almost skeletal, brushed mine. "You are dying," he said suddenly. It wasn't a question. I couldn't lie to him. Something in his presence demanded honesty. "Yes," I whispered. "Brain tumor. The doctors gave me 6 months, maybe a year, if I'm lucky." Robert nodded slowly, as if this confirmed something he'd already suspected. "And that is why you chose the storage room." "It has sunlight," I said quietly. I wanted to feel warm before the end." He turned away, looking out over the garden. "When I was your age, I thought I had forever. I made plans. I built things. I believed in the future with the arrogance only the young possess."
He paused.
"Now I know better." "How long do you have?" I asked. "Doctors stopped giving me timelines years ago," he said. "I am still here, though. Stubbornly inconvenient." The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. Not quite a smile, but something close. "Perhaps we are more alike than your mother realizes." He turned to face me fully. "Do not tell her," he said. "Your mother needs the world to be simple. Illness complicates things. It makes her anxious. And when she is anxious, she is unbearable." I almost laughed. The observation was so accurate, so unkind, and yet so true that I couldn't help myself. "I won't," I promised. "Good." He handed me the book of poems.
"Take this.
The iron supplements will help with the nosebleeds, but poetry is better for the soul. Read whatever you want and return it when you are finished." As he walked back toward the house, he called over his shoulder, "The rose garden is mine. Do not feel you must avoid it. Dying people should not live in hiding." 3 weeks passed in a strange rhythm. I took the iron supplements, and the nosebleeds became less frequent. I read Robert's poems in the afternoon sun, my notebook filling with passages that felt like they were written specifically for someone like me. One morning, a lawyer arrived. I recognized the signs. Mom immediately shifted into her performance mode, her voice becoming sweeter, her movements more deliberate. She'd done something. Something she was pleased about. The three of us sat in Robert's study. He looked even more gaunt than usual, his breathing slightly labored. "Robert has decided to make some changes to his will," the lawyer began, opening a leather portfolio. "He would like to include a provision for his stepdaughter, Jade." I looked up, startled. Mom's smile was already calculating. "How wonderful, Robert. I'm sure Jade is very grateful." "It is not benevolence," Robert said flatly. "It is pragmatism." He turned to me. "When I die, and I will die sooner rather than later, you will need money. Your mother will not give it to you. She will claim it all belongs to her. She has already begun mentally spending what she believes will be hers." Mom's face flushed. "That's not. You have already called your sister twice asking about my health," Robert continued, ignoring her. "You are counting. I can see it in your eyes." He turned back to the lawyer. "Set up a trust. $300,000. Jade receives it on her 18th birthday, or upon my death, whichever comes first. It is accessible to her, and only her. No exceptions." The lawyer scribbled notes, looking uncomfortable. "Robert, this is unfair to me," Mom protested. "I'm your wife. I have supported you, cared for you." "You have performed care," he corrected. "There is a difference. You married me because I had money and because you needed an escape from your ex-husband. I knew this. I accepted it. But I will not reward it at the expense of a girl who is dying." The word hung in the air like a stone dropped into still water. Mom's eyes snapped to me, betrayal and fury mixing in her gaze. "You told him? Your daughter is bleeding internally," Robert said. "Has been for weeks, probably months. Your concern has been whether she leaves her room at inconvenient times." The contrast is instructive. After the lawyer left, Mom didn't speak to me for 2 days. She moved through the house like a ghost herself, radiating cold fury. But she didn't ask for the money. She didn't demand anything. She simply withdrew, becoming more polished, more desperate to please Robert, as if his affection was the only currency that mattered. I found her one evening in the garden, standing before the red flowers. I didn't ask him for anything, I said quietly. She didn't turn. I know. That's what makes it worse. He chose you. Her voice was hollow. Do you know what I gave up for him? What I left behind? Your children, I said without thinking. She finally turned, and I saw something break in her expression. For just a moment, the mask slipped. I saw genuine pain there, genuine loss. Then it hardened again. You're just like your father, she said, always making me the villain in everyone's story. She walked past me, back toward the house. I stood alone among the red flowers, feeling the weight of inherited guilt, of family sins compounding across generations. I thought of Chloe, working in Dad's shadow, becoming harder and crueler to survive. I thought of Mom, running toward wealth only to find a hollow. I thought of Dad, drowning in debt and denial. And I thought of Robert, who had somehow built his own kind of peace within the collapse. Robert's health declined rapidly after that day. He moved more slowly. He began taking meals in his room. Sometimes I could hear him coughing from the hallway, deep, rattling sounds that suggested his lungs were giving up the fight. But he continued to send for me in the afternoons. We didn't always talk. Sometimes I would find him asleep in his reading chair, the book open across his chest, and I would simply sit beside him for an hour, reading my own pages. The quiet felt like an agreement between us. Two people running out of time, learning to exist in the spaces between words. One afternoon, he was awake and waiting for me. Sit, he said, gesturing to the chair opposite his. I have something to tell you. I obeyed. He began, was my daughter. I stayed silent, sensing this story needed to flow uninterrupted. She was brilliant, creative. She wanted to be a painter. He stared at a point somewhere beyond the room. I was very ambitious when I was young. I built my empire, and I expected her to fit into it. I expected her to be proud of it. When she wasn't, when she pursued art instead of law or business, I withdrew my support. He coughed, pressing a handkerchief to his mouth. She died 14 years ago. Car accident. Alone. We hadn't spoken in 2 years before that. I'm sorry, I whispered. I've spent 14 years, he continued, being sorry. It changes nothing. The dead do not care about your regrets. They only care that you did not say the things that mattered when you had the chance. He looked at me directly. Your mother is not a good person, Jade. I think you know this. But your father is also not a good person in his way. And Chloe will become worse than both of them combined, because she is learning that survival means becoming hard. Yes, I said. But you, he continued, you are something different. You chose to sacrifice. Not because you had to. Because you wanted to protect them. That is either the greatest strength or the greatest weakness. I have not yet decided which. It was weakness, I said. In my last life, it killed me. In this life, he asked. I don't know yet. Robert nodded slowly. Then the time you have is an experiment. Will you be stronger? Or will the same patterns repeat? He leaned back in his chair. I am telling you this because I will not be here much longer. I want you to know that someone saw you, saw your choices, did not judge you for them. Tears were running down my face before I realized I was crying. The money, he said gently, is for whatever comes next, whether that is life or something else. You do not have to earn it. You do not have to deserve it. You only have to survive long enough to receive it. 2 months after Robert's confession, Mom called a family meeting. Jade needs to see a proper doctor, she announced, sitting at the breakfast table with her hands folded precisely. I've made an appointment at the city hospital. The best oncologist in the province. We leave this Saturday. Robert and I exchanged a glance. Your mother is right, he said quietly. You should know exactly what you are dealing with. The appointment felt clinical and final. The doctor, a woman with kind eyes and measured words, examined the scans that had been taken months ago. She asked questions about symptoms, about pain, about my daily function. Then she looked at me carefully. Your mother mentioned you've been bleeding? Occasionally, I said. It's been getting better. The doctor frowned, then pulled up my file. These scans are from last year? Yes. She studied them, then looked back at me. I'd like to order new scans. These are concerning, but they're old. Things could have progressed. Or, she paused, unusual for a doctor usually so sure of themselves, they could be different than expected. The new scans took 3 hours. The waiting room was painted a soothing blue that somehow made everything feel worse. Mom read magazines. I stared at my hands. When the doctor finally returned, she sat down slowly. The growth is still there, she said carefully, but it hasn't significantly enlarged in the past year, which is unusual. Most tumors of this type progress more rapidly. She removed her glasses, rubbing her eyes.
I want to be honest with you, Jade.
I don't have a clear answer for why you're still here. The bleeding could be from the tumor, or it could be from something else entirely: anemia, nutritional deficiency, stress. My heart was racing. So, what does this mean? It means, the doctor said slowly, that you are still very much alive and you need to stay that way. I'm recommending we begin a treatment plan. Nothing invasive yet, but monitoring, medication, a specialist in immunotherapy we're having success with. If we're going to do this, we do it carefully. Mom's hand found mine in the car ride home. For the first time, it felt like an anchor rather than a cage. The storage room gradually transformed. The old furniture was moved out. By whom? I never asked, though I suspected Robert had arranged it. I set up a small desk, a proper bed instead of the makeshift one I'd constructed. The window remained the focal point, and I continued my ritual of sitting in the afternoon light, though now I was studying pharmacy textbooks I'd downloaded, information about my condition, about treatments, about the possibility of time. Robert's health had stabilized at a lower point. He no longer left his room most days. A nurse came twice weekly. His breathing grew more labored, but he seemed almost serene about it, as if he'd made peace with the ending. One afternoon, I found him awake and looking out his window at the garden below. I've been reading about clinical trials, I told him. Places that are having success with treatments like mine. Good, he said without turning.
You should live, Jade. Not to fix your family. Not to sacrifice for anyone.
But simply because it would be a waste of the universe if you did not. And you? I asked. What about you? He finally turned to look at me. I have already lived.
I have made my peace with that.
I only hope I have given you permission to do the same. Thank you, I whispered. He smiled, barely a movement of his lips. Thank your mother. She married me for money. I married her for the chaos. We both got more than we bargained for. He paused. Perhaps that is the only real marriage, when both people exceed each other's expectations. That night, the nosebleed stopped. Completely. I waited for them to return, checked my pillow obsessively, held tissues to my nose just to see if there was any blood. But nothing came. Just ordinary days, passing into weeks. I began to believe, cautiously, that something inside me was fighting back. Mom started spending more time with me. Real time, not performance time. We had dinner together without Robert, and she told me about her childhood, about why she'd run so hard from poverty, why she'd clung so desperately to wealth and appearance. I was terrified of becoming nothing, she admitted one evening. So, I became everything that looked like something. And now? I asked. Now, she said, looking out at the garden in the fading light, I'm learning that nothing and something are not as different as I thought. The hillside villa, which had felt like a prison when I arrived, began to feel like something else. Not home, exactly, but a place where broken people could sit quietly together, not trying to fix each other, simply existing in the spaces between their scars. And in the corner of the garden, the red flowers bloomed on, beautiful and merciless, a reminder that beauty and decay were always dancing together, in everything, in everyone, waiting to see which would prove stronger. The sun rose each morning over my window, warm and patient and infinite. And for the first time in 2 lives, I was beginning to believe I might see how many mornings came after.